Hey everybody, welcome to my next video. Today I'm going to be doing a coloring of that Skeletor piece that was just up on the screen. Let's take a look at the drawing process first. I drew it on the iPad Pro using the Procreate app, one of my favorite digital drawing tools. I started with a pencil under the brush section, which went straight to a 2B pencil, and then started drawing. So this is pretty sped up, but you get the idea. I like to start with a really loose form, do the whole normal grid for where head things should go, and I'll do another whole other video on that. And then I start to go over another layer with a black marker and start adding in details. It really does help if you have an idea of what you're drawing before you go. And I tend to draw a lot of Skeletor and a lot of just skulls in general. So I have a lot of skull reference, so that's never a shortage on my iPad. But even with the skull reference, notice how I'm skipping some of those details in the rough draft and then just going right over with black ink in a different place, kind of cleaning everything up as I go. The idea behind this, and this is a really important idea, that you can, as you're drawing, make changes. I know that sounds crazy. Sobol, how do you mean I can make changes? If this is, it's not a contract. This is a drawing. So if you don't like a certain line, you realize while you're working on it that it just doesn't work, don't use it. Normally you'd use an eraser, or if it were painting, you could paint over it, if it's the right kind of paint, of course. But with digital, it's all layers. So here we go. That's we're almost done with it, really. We're really close to the end here. Just did a little bit of detail on his bandolier that kind of goes up the side, and it did a little black background, and there we go. So now there's the piece, and I printed it out. Just gave myself a really nice res PDF, printed it out, and I'm now coloring over a decently qualityed print copy of it. So I'm coloring with copics or copics, depends on where you're from. And why am I starting with green? Let's talk about the color choice. Skeletor's skull is not like a traditional bleached skull. It's not a white skull. It has hints of green and hints of beige in it, but it's also got, depending on lighting, I've seen some beautiful paintings with hints of pink in there. So that's why I'm using this skin tone on the skull itself. I'm doing all the green or most of the green on one side to give it the idea of light, and there's hints of it still kind of going past the surface of the skull on the one side to go toward the other. And then I'm going to be leaving one side mostly white, not totally, but mostly. So again, I got a green. I'm going in with some brick white and some flesh tones, and I will specifically add an image of what colors I used later. We'll do a little bit of an aftermath, like what kind of colors I used. But really, the big thing with my technique is I just like my drawing, I move around a lot. I do a lot of, let's color this area, color this area. With Copics, my normal trick is to start with the lightest color that I'm going to use, and then I build up with darker colors. And the biggest thing that I've learned with Copics over the years, I've been using them since 2001, got introduced to them at San Diego Comic-Con, and just absolutely fell in love with them. Well, it was early on in my professional career, and just fell in love. What I've really learned about the Copics is that going over one color with another color helps to bleach, but to also blend. So starting with that lighter color, building up with a slightly darker one, and then even going back over again with a lighter. So like what you see me doing now, I did a little bit of the beige, did a little bit of the green, and then went in and I'm using a really low level warm gray. I'm pretty sure that's a warm 1. And I'm just attacking that one side to darken it up, but leaving the white crests and the white areas for shadow to not hit, and then going even back over some of that peach and brick white and the green in order to darken it up just a hair. Really paying attention to where I drew the little nooks and crannies in the bones, because that's where the most value is going to hide. And of course, going back in. Once it dries a little bit, going back in with even the same color, but even one value darker. So I think I jumped from a warm 1 up to a warm 2. And then when I jumped in right now, you can see I'm pretty sure that's a warm 3. So I'm just going kind of value by value right up that value scale of my warm grays to use them. And the idea is just to add the detail where I can. I'm doing a little bit of just like the black dots of like little drops of spotting in the skull. I did some of them with black, but let's do some of them with gray. And then I'm going in and adding the shadow underneath that cowl because that just, again, helps to create the idea of depth. So I think you're going to see me grab a different one now. Yeah, there we go. Got a little bit of a darker value just to really get that idea of dark inside some of those areas. And remember, if you don't like that dark color, you can do what I'm doing right there. Oh, I didn't like how gray it was. Well, going back over it with that original color will allow you to clean it up. It will blend better. So it's a really neat little trick. Just, again, it's a lot of layering. Does it take more ink? Absolutely. But notice how you really can't see marker colors. So I'm almost done with the skull. By the time I'm hitting the eyes, it's like we're basically done here. The skull was really simple. You know, it's just a headshot, so there's not a lot to it. But did a little bit of orange in the eye, going in with a different, more intense brownish orange. And again, I'll have to check on the color, and I'll do a slide on that later. There we go. So we're done with the skull, and we're moving on to the purple cowl. I picked 3 very specific purples that if you looked at any one of them by itself, you'd be like, okay, I can see how that color could be used, but it's not any one color that makes it. Just like the skull is not one color, there are lots of colors used for that cowl. So I'm hitting up a number of colors here and leaving some of those white spots as well. Again, the idea is to leave white on one side to give the illusion of light, and then start to go in and really create the form with my color. When I know I'm using color, unlike my pencil illustrations, or even a black, if it's totally a black ink, if I know I'm going to use color, I don't do a lot of lines with my pencil or with my black ink. I will do all my line work, all that real structuring of the form with my color. It not only does that save me a ton of time, so a head sketch that if I were trying to really detail out like a fine illustration that might take an hour, I can be done with in a half hour. And it just, again, it's all about making me be able to get the job done better looking in less time. For those of you who are considering getting into this professionally, at some point we're going to maybe do a video on the lesson of breaking down your time, how much your time is worth versus how much you need to make in order to make this industry work for you. And that would be a really good lesson to consider when you're thinking, how long should I spend on this drawing in order to make it worth doing, or in order to be able to afford to charge a certain amount, or move on to the next one. And again, that is a whole other topic. Just how much should I charge for my work? I'm able to charge a certain amount traditionally based on experience, based on my skill level. And if I can get more done in the same amount of time and still get the same pay rate, then that means that's how I make money. That's not about cheating people. That's about being very honest. This is how much I charge, and this is why it works out. And again, we'll do a whole video on that later. It's a really intelligent process for art buyers and art makers so that everyone knows exactly what they're getting into. So again, working on these purples, you can see I've used 2 different purples now, and there's that third one. You can see it's definitely just a little bit hotter of a purple. Got a little bit of warmth in it. It's a little bit more of the traditional purple that is used in Skeletor's colors, if you're thinking purely from the 80s toy line, but I'm using it for highlighting purposes, and that's going to really help because it, again, just adds that little bit of warmth in the area where I want things to be lighter. And then I can always go back in and darken up. Now, if I were really feeling saucy, today as I'm coloring this, I could have gone back in with some grays as well. Just to really add another value, what we call a tone. When you mix gray and a color, what's called a tone. Right now I'm not using tones, let's be clear on that. I'm doing different colors and I'm building them up on top of each other, so it gives the illusion of different intensities or how rich a color is. But a tone is the color plus gray. Chose not to do that with this. I did that in the skull though, because there's that green and that beige inside with the gray. Oh, there you go. You can see that purple going back to one of the ones I already used. and really just highlighting areas, darkening them up to create more of a sense of value, which is definitely fun. All right, so even here you can see I do occasionally I'll go back and I'll just retouch some things. So I grabbed some yellow and touched a little bit of the skull. But what I'm really doing with that yellow, it's a super light yellow-green, is I'm hitting that background. Hey, Jason, why would you use that color in the background? You know, there are so many cool colors that would be like mystical and kind of go with his powers. Like how about some, purple energy, whatever. I could do that. However, let's just thinking as an artist, if I'm already using yellow and green inside the skull, those colors are going to work really well against the purple. That's called a contrast. And now I'm going back in with that with a different yellow, but still in the same family. So like that yellow that I'm using right now, the yellow-green that I started with, and that yellow-green that's in the skull, they all feel like they go together more. So it creates a little bit of harmony in the piece so that everything feels like it's got a plan. So again, I'm going in lighter to darker. I can blend with the lighter again if I want. Right now I'm just going over it with the dark. And notice how I'm still using even a little bit of dotting, like this, what's called a stippling effect, where you poke little polka dots similar to that black splatter, but instead of it splattering, I'm doing very intentional dots. That just adds a depth to the color so that it feels like it's flowing more naturally. And there you can see me doing some of it. So again, lots of layering on top, then going in. I've got a fourth orange. Now that's definitely an orange, which I used that orange previously in the eyes. So again, I'm trying to hit those colors more than once in different places so that they feel like they go together. Otherwise, it's just color for the sake of color does not add to a piece. Be very clear about that. Color for the sake of color does not add. You want to pick your colors carefully so that when you are using them, it all makes sense. Now, one last walkthrough. Pretty sure that they're just going through and blending some things together. And the more I can blend, the better. And I'm pretty sure I'm about to start adding another just hint of green. There we go. So I've got a really cool minty green that I'm adding just to add that little kind of ghosty hint, that very spectral, very almost Ghostbuster-esque glow to his skull, but only in certain parts because I only want to kind of showcase that on certain sides. And then in certain teeth, there we go, leaving some parts white, some parts green, some parts with the gray. So we're nearing completion here. It's a fun video. Thanks for joining. Make sure you leave me some comments. Let me know who you want to see me draw or color next. Thanks for stopping by.